Thank you very much. So
Thank you so much.
let me start by saying, in particular, thank you to Ash Pachari for the invitation. I feel very honored to address this critically important meeting. Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
I
Thank
don't know
you.
how that happened. Okay, so basically, a very big thank you to Ash Pachari for inviting me to this critically important meeting and giving me a chance to talk to so many wonderful young people. The future is in your hands, and we really need you to act in every possible way to see that we move the planet forward in a safer way. So, first of all, let me say just something about the state of the oceans. The reason why we've just heard Mike Rand talking about the pollution of the oceans is because of our human attitude towards what we call the natural world. So I just want to first of all say, actually, do we treat ourselves as apart from the natural world, excuse me, apart from the natural world, or a part of the natural world? So all of our language at the moment is built around the idea that we are separate, that somehow we are not a part of it. Of course, we co-evolved on this planet with every aspect of that natural world. We are a part of it, but we have pushed ourselves into this position where we feel we are above it all. And this year, with the COVID-19 pandemic, we are suffering from not fully understanding our interaction with as being part of that natural world. And of course, the bigger threat is from the destruction of the oceans in the way that this is continuing. There is no such thing as waste in the natural world until we came along and developed this notion that we can wrap things up and throw them away. In the natural world, everything is recycled. And it's taking us a very long time to learn that critically important business of recycling. I'm delighted to hear that Mike Rand took South Australia into a banning of plastic bags, etc. I'm senior strategy advisor to the government of Rwanda, and I'm very pleased to say I believe Rwanda was the first country in the world to ban plastic bags. The initiation of these exercises need not be in the developed world. They can happen in the emerging economies. Rwanda, first of all, banned plastic bags back in 2010, and now they've banned all single-use plastics. So it's an advance in a society that really is gaining in every single way from the respect that people are paying to their environment. Now, of course, what I really want to focus on is how we can manage to change the situation. I refer now to what China did in introducing a new word. I think the English translation is simply eco-civilization. And this was introduced in the Communist Party constitution in 2012 in China, and it's now part of the government constitution in China. And eco-civilization is interpreted as meaning that we develop our well-being alongside the well-being of ecosystems. We can't separate one from the other because actually we're all part of that ecosystem. Now, until we get that into our heads, that we need to treat ourselves as part of the ecosystems, we will continue using the ecosystems as a disposable, whereas, of course, we totally depend on it, as do all other living creatures. Now, what I want to move on to is the question of rising sea levels and the question of climate change, because this quite simply is the biggest challenge the world is faced with today. Let's take the Arctic Sea. The Arctic Sea is now 50% exposed to sunlight during the Arctic summer every year. And that level of exposure is growing. And of course, it never was. there were explorers who walked across to the North Pole. You can't do that anymore. You have to swim there. So what is this? What's the consequence of this for the rest of the planet? Well, let's just remember that blue sea absorbs sunlight very effectively. White ice reflects it very effectively. So of course, we've now disturbed the planetary climate system by creating a hotspot in the middle of the North Pole in the polar summer. And the result of this is that averaged through the year, the whole of the Arctic Circle region is now heating up at 2.5 times the rate of the rest of the planet. Now, why does this affect every one of us, particularly those who are island nations? And here in Britain, we are indeed also an island nation, but also anyone who's living on a city that's at a coastline. 80% of our cities were at coastlines. Why does it affect all of us? Because sitting in the Arctic Circle is Greenland, and Greenland ice is now beginning to melt. And it's also following the same pattern as the Arctic ice. It's following not a linear depletion, but a plus linear. In other words, there's a very big positive feedback in the loss of the ice from Greenland. And when all of the ice in Greenland melts, sea levels will rise by 7 meters. Now, that's not going to happen quickly. It's taken hundreds and hundreds of thousands and millions of years to build all that ice up. But at the same time as the Arctic is melting, the Antarctic is becoming destabilized by the warming of the ocean below, the bits of the Antarctic ice that are sitting on the ocean. And we're in danger of seeing very large chunks of ice entering the ocean. And one of these chunks could easily push sea levels up. Just with one chunk could push the sea levels up by 0.5 to 1 meter. So we're talking about a possibility that we are risking the future of civilization. And the reason I say it as dramatically as that is because moving forward in time, it's not very long before one of the biggest cities in the world, Calcutta in India, is no longer going to be livable because of not just rising sea levels, storms at sea, causing the incursion of water further and further inland, and Calcutta is already being flooded quite frequently. When it's flooded every year, then of course you can no longer live there. And across the water from Calcutta is Bangladesh. Bangladesh, 2/3 of that country is no longer going to be livable, no longer being livable. And as we therefore move forward in time, it's not a long stretch before we get to the position where perhaps 160 million people in that region are looking for somewhere else to live. Where do they go? Does that cause a destabilization in our planetary economic system, in our global living system? Yes, it does. We've now got a taster from COVID-19 of what a destabilization looks like. The economies of the world are in a very peculiar state now. Imagine what Europe has managed with the migration that has occurred from Northern Africa. That has destabilized Europe in a very strange way. This is caused by a few million refugees. Talk about 150 million, you're looking at a global disaster on a very large scale. Now, the problem is, we reached a very good agreement in Paris in 2015. I think it was a good agreement. We said 1.5 degrees, not 2 degrees. That was a decision that was made at the Pacific Island Forum. I was there representing Britain, and I managed to push the British government into supporting the islanders in their desire to see 1.5 and not 2. We're nowhere near managing the 1.5 degrees. Greenhouse gases are still increasing more rapidly than before. And now it's actually methane that is going up very rapidly. And methane is going up rapidly largely not because of the methane leakage from fossil fuel usage, but more from more farming to produce livestock, to produce meat, to meet the demands of a growing middle class across the world. I'm just going to end this with saying, how do we act to manage this all together? And I was delighted when I heard Mike Rand say that a climate group has been formed with 200 sub-national groups. I'm now going to tell you we're calling for a global climate alliance of nations and states to come together under the heading of climate repair at the COP meeting, COP26, which now will be probably in November 2021,
About
and,
1 minute.
and give their allegiance to the notion of climate repair. And by climate repair, I mean three things. One is deep and rapid emissions reduction. Two is greenhouse gas removal. We've put too much into the atmosphere already at a rate of about 30 to 40 billion tons a year, highly scaled up, to bring the level down from roughly 500 parts per million, including methane today, to 350 parts per million in about 30 years' time. If we can get an alliance under that series of challenges, then I think our civilization has a chance, and all of you young people will find that you have a good place to live on. Thank you so much for giving me this chance to talk to you.